How do you explain to someone who has never descended 300 meters below the Earth what it means to dig a tunnel under an exploded nuclear reactor while radiation seeps through the rock as if it were thin paper, and your friends around you begin to die one by one, without anyone up there really caring whether you survive or not, as long as the job is completed on time by the Moscow engineers who have never set foot inside that subterranean hell for even a second? My name is Grigory Mikhailov. I am 68 years old today, and in 1986 I was 29 when I was summoned along with 399 other miners for what we were told was the most important mission in Soviet history. We were 400 strong, experienced men, accustomed to the dangers of coal mines. Today, in 2026, 40 years after those 30 days digging under reactor number 4 at Chernobyl, I am the only one still breathing. The only one. Let me repeat this because it's important that you understand. Of the 400 miners who went down into that tunnel, 399 died. Cancer, leukemia, organ failure, infections that their bodies, destroyed by radiation, could no longer fight. The last of them, Viktor Sokolov, my best friend since childhood in Tula, died 3 months ago. I was by his bedside in the hospital when he whispered his last words. "Grigory, you have to tell what they did to us." And that's why I'm here today, recording this so that someone knows the truth before I'm gone too. Before I continue telling what happened in those days that changed my life forever, I want to ask you, the listener, one thing. Subscribe to this channel. Just press the red button below, because what I'm going to reveal here has never been said in any official documentary, in any government-approved book. Only those who were there, only those who saw it with their own eyes can tell this truth. And I was there. Come back here with me now. I have an old miner's helmet in a drawer at my house in Tula, cracked in 3 places, with a headlamp that hasn't worked for decades. That helmet belonged to Viktor. He gave it to me on the 27th day inside the tunnel, 3 days before we got out, when he could no longer hold tools because his hands were shaking uncontrollably. "Keep this for me, Grisha," he said, using my childhood nickname. "If I don't get out of here, at least the helmet will." I laughed at the time. We still thought we would survive, that it was just extreme exhaustion, that in a few weeks we would be back home with our families and a good story of heroism to tell. What idiots we were. How young, stupid and naive. My life before Chernobyl was simple and good. I was a coal miner in Tula, as my father had been, as my grandfather had been before him. 3rd generation, descending into the depths of the earth to extract the fuel that kept the Soviet Union running. I started at 18, right after military service, and by 29 I was already considered one of the best. I knew rock like other men know women. I knew from the sound of the pickaxe where the stone would give way, where it would resist, where it hid veins of coal. I had calloused hands, a strong back, lungs that were already beginning to feel the weight of 11 years breathing coal dust. But I was still healthy, strong, alive. I married Oksana when she was 19 and I was 22. We met at a May Day party where she was with her friends, and I was drunk on cheap vodka, celebrating another month survived in the mines. She had long black hair down to her waist and green eyes that seemed to see right through you. "You smell like coal," were her first words to me. "And you smell like spring," I replied, and she laughed that laugh that still echoes in my memory when I close my eyes. We got married 6 months later in a small ceremony with 30 people in the Orthodox church near the mine. We had our first child, Dmitry, a year later. Katya, our daughter, was born 3 years after Dmitry. In 1986, Dmitry was 7 and Katya was 4. Dmitry wanted to be a cosmonaut. Katya wanted to be a ballerina. I wanted to live long enough to see them grow up. My routine was the same every day. I woke up at 5 in the morning. Oksana was already in the kitchen, preparing strong black tea and bread with butter. At 5:30, I left home with my metal lunchbox, full of boiled potatoes and meat when there was meat. At 6 in the morning, I went down into the mine with my shift of 20 men. We stayed down there until 2 in the afternoon. We came up covered in black dust from head to toe, coughing. I would exhale the dust from my lungs, laughing and complaining in equal measure. I would shower in the mine's communal showers, put on clean clothes, and arrive home at 3:30. I would have dinner at 4, play with the children until 7, listen to the radio until 9, and then sleep. I would repeat the whole thing the next day. It was a hard life, but it was my life, and I loved it. Viktor Sokolov had been my best friend since we were 8 years old. We grew up on the same street, entered the mine on the same day, and married 6 months apart. He was taller than me, thinner and quieter. I spoke for both of us. He thought for both of us. Together, we were a perfect pair down there in the darkness. I would open the shafts. He would calculate the supports. I would advance with the pickaxe. He would ensure the ceiling wouldn't collapse on our heads. In 11 years working together, we never had a serious accident. Not a fracture, not a collapse. This was rare in the Soviet coal mines, where men died with a frequency statistically acceptable to the Moscow bureaucrats. "We're lucky, Grisha," Viktor always said. "Luck doesn't last forever," I replied. "Then let's enjoy it while it lasts," he laughed. Our luck ran out on April 28, 1986, 2 days after the Chernobyl explosion, which at the time we didn't even know had happened. I was home that Sunday, my day off. Dmitry was in the yard, trying to make a paper airplane fly higher than the fence. Katya was drawing with colored chalk on the concrete floor near the kitchen. Oksana was preparing borscht for lunch, and the smell of cooked beets filled the whole house. At 10 o'clock in the morning, there was a knock at the door. 3 loud knocks, officers. I opened it and found 2 men in military uniform. "Grigory Petrovich Mikhailov?" asked the older one, a captain by rank. "Yes," I replied, feeling my stomach clench. "You're being called up for national emergency service. Gather clothes for 30 days and work equipment. The truck leaves in 2 hours from the central square." "Called up where?" I asked. "Confidential information. You'll be informed at your destination. It's a direct order from the party central committee." "But I have a family. I have work at the mine early tomorrow." "The mine has been informed. Your family will receive special compensation. 2 hours, comrade. Don't be late." They left. Oksana stood in the kitchen doorway with a wooden spoon in her hand, dripping red broth onto the floor. "What was that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know. Some kind of emergency service. I'll find out when I get there." 30 days, Grigory. 30 days away from home. "I'll be back. I always come back." I lied without knowing I was lying. I went to my room, grabbed my old military backpack from my mandatory service, put in 3 changes of clothes, extra socks, a toothbrush, soap, a photo of Oksana and the children that I still carry in my wallet. I put on my mine work clothes, thick canvas pants, a flannel shirt, and reinforced leather boots with steel toe caps. I put on my miner's helmet, the one I've worn for 11 years, with the headlamp I've already replaced 6 times. At 11:30, I went down to the living room. Dmitry looked at me with big, frightened eyes. "Dad, are you going on a trip?" "Yes, my son, but I'll be back soon." "You promise?" "I promise. Another unknowing lie. I picked Katya up. She smelled of chalk and milk. "Daddy will bring a present when he gets back," I said. "I want a doll," she replied seriously. "Then you'll get a doll." I kissed her forehead. I kissed Dmitri's head. I hugged Oksana for a long minute at the front door. "I love you," she whispered in my ear. "I love you too. Take care of them." "You'll come back, Grigory. You have to come back." "I'll come back." I went out the door. I didn't look back because if I did, I would start crying, and a Soviet man doesn't cry in front of his family. I walked to the central square, where there was already a military truck and about 20 miners I knew from the various mines in the region. Viktor was there, with the same confused expression I must have had on my face. "You too?" I asked. "Me too. They knocked on the door at 10. Olga is furious. She says it's Moscow trying to kill us again." "Do you know where we're going?" "Nobody knows, but look how many miners there are. It must be to dig something." "Dig what in a national emergency?" "We'll find out." We climbed onto the truck. More miners arrived. By noon, we were 40 men from Tula. The truck left. We traveled all day, all night, the next day. We only stopped for basic necessities and to eat military rations in cans. Nobody told us anything. On the second night, we arrived at a huge military camp with hundreds of tents, trucks, helicopters, men in uniform running from one side to the other. "Where are we?" someone asked. "Pripyat, Kiev region," the driver replied, "near the Chernobyl nuclear power plant." It was the first time I'd heard that name. Chernobyl. I didn't yet know it was the name of the end of my life as I knew it. We got off the truck, our legs numb after 2 days of traveling. An officer gathered us in a large tent that smelled of wet tarpaulin and the sweat of many men. There were other groups of miners inside. I recognized accents from Donbass, Moscow, and Siberia. There were easily 200 men in that tent. A colonel climbed onto an improvised platform of wooden crates. "Comrade miners," he began in an echoing voice, "you have been summoned because you are the best excavators in the Soviet Union. On April 26th, there was an accident at Reactor number 4 of the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. The reactor core is exposed, and there is a risk of complete meltdown if it reaches the underground water table. Your mission is to dig a tunnel 150 meters long directly under the reactor so that we can install a cooling system that will prevent catastrophe." Total silence in the tent. Someone coughed. Another murmured something. "How much time do we have?" asked a miner from Donbass. 30 days. It can't go beyond that." "Protective equipment?" Viktor asked beside me. "It will be provided as it becomes available." "And the radiation?" I asked. "Levels are high, but within acceptable limits for short-term work. You will work in 4-hour shifts. Special financial compensation will be paid, a bonus of 5 times the monthly salary." 5 times the salary. I earned 180 rubles a month. 5 times that would be 900 rubles. With that, I could buy a new television, clothes for the children, maybe even save for a Lada car in a few years. "Can anyone refuse?" another miner asked. "No," the colonel replied simply. "This is National Emergency Service ordered by the Central Committee. Refusal will be treated as desertion in wartime." War. He used the word war. Against what? Against an invisible reactor bleeding radiation into the air. We were divided into groups of 20 men each. My group included Viktor and 18 other miners I didn't know. Our leader was a Moscow engineer named Konstantin Vasilyev, a man in his 40s with thick-rimmed glasses and hands that had never held a pickaxe in their lives. "You start tomorrow at dawn," Konstantin informed us. 4-hour shifts, 3 shifts a day. That means we'll have 60 men working simultaneously in constant rotation. The tunnel needs to be 2 meters high by 2.5 meters wide. Wooden supports every 3 meters. Minimum advance required, 5 meters per day. 5 meters digging rock in 4 hours is impossible, said Viktor. "Then do the impossible," replied Konstantin without looking at him. They led us to the tents where we would sleep. 20 men per tent, metal camp beds with thin mattresses that smelled of mildew, no pillows, a thin blanket each, communal toilets outside, food served in a camp mess hall 3 times a day. That night, I slept little. The man in the bed next to mine, a Siberian miner named Oleg, snored like a tractor. Viktor was in the bed on the other side, murmuring in his sleep. At 3 in the morning, I got up, left the tent, and lit a cigarette. The sky was clear, stars shining, a waning moon illuminating the hundreds of tents in the camp. In the distance, perhaps 3 kilometers away, I saw a strange light, bluish, bright, pulsating gently as if breathing. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said a voice behind me. I turned and saw a young soldier, no more than 20 years old, also smoking. "What is that light?" I asked. "The reactor, the exposed core, burning graphite. It makes this blue light that looks like the aurora borealis. Beautiful from afar, deadly up close." "Did you go there?" "I did, once. 5 minutes driving a truck carrying sand. 5 minutes, and I took a dose of radiation that will kill me in 10 years, according to the doctors." He laughed, but it was a laugh without joy. "You miners will be digging under that. Good luck." He put out his cigarette and left. I stared at the blue light until the sky began to brighten on the horizon. At 5 in the morning, we were woken by shouts and whistles. A quick breakfast, watery oatmeal, black bread, unsweetened tea. At 6, we were at the tunnel entrance. It wasn't quite a tunnel yet. It was just a depression in the ground near the power plant buildings, perhaps 200 meters from the exploded reactor. I looked up and saw the destruction for the first time. The roof of the reactor building had disappeared. There was a huge hole from which smoke billowed, and that blue light even during the day. Debris scattered everywhere, pulverized concrete, twisted metal bars, and silence. A wrong silence. No birds singing, no insects buzzing. "Why is it so quiet?" I asked Viktor. "Because everything that flies or crawls is already dead or has fled," replied one of the veteran miners. "The radiation kills everything alive. We're the only idiots still here voluntarily." "It's not voluntary if we can't refuse," Viktor murmured. They gave us helmets with headlamps, pickaxes, shovels, sledgehammers. No protective equipment, no special suits, no dosimeters. "And radiation protection?" Oleg asked. "Work fast and get out fast," Konstantin replied. "The less time exposed, the better." "That's not protection," Oleg said. "It's what we have," Konstantin concluded. We went down. The first 3 meters were relatively soft earth. Then we found rock, hard limestone that resisted the pickaxe. The heat started at 5 meters deep. At 10 meters, it was like being inside an oven. At 15 meters, I was drenched in sweat, breathing hot air that burned my lungs, feeling dizzy. "The temperature down here is 40 degrees Celsius, someone said with an improvised thermometer. At the 20th meter, where the horizontal tunnel began towards the reactor, it was 50 degrees. We worked in silence, only the sound of metal against stone, heavy breathing, occasional curses when stubborn rock wouldn't budge. My 4-hour shift felt like 4 days. When we finally emerged, staggering into the daylight, it was 10 in the morning, and the sun was high. I fell to my knees and vomited. Around me, other men were vomiting too. "It's normal," said a military doctor who appeared out of nowhere. "A combination of extreme heat and the beginning of radiation exposure. Drink water, rest for 8 hours, then come back for the next shift." "Beginning of exposure?" Viktor asked, wiping his mouth. "How much radiation is down there?" "High levels, but not fatal for short exposure," the doctor replied, without looking me in the eye. A lie. I recognized a lie when I heard it. I had grown up in the Soviet Union. I had learned to detect official lies before I learned to read. We returned to the barracks. I slept for 3 hours and dreamed of Oksana calling me from afar, but I couldn't reach her. I woke up sweating, even though the tent was cold. At 6 in the afternoon, we returned to the tunnel. Second shift, another 4 hours digging in the unbearable heat, breathing air that tasted like metal, feeling my head throbbing, my muscles trembling. Little by little, day after day, the tunnel advanced. 5 meters on the first day, 6 on the second, 7 on the third, when we found a vein of softer rock. On the 4th day, we lost our first man. It wasn't inside the tunnel, it was at night, in the tent. A miner from Donbass named Anatoly began convulsing at 2 in the morning. He vomited blood, a lot of blood. Doctors came, took him away in a hurry. In the morning they informed us that Anatoly had died of a sudden heart attack. "Heart attack," Viktor said incredulously. "He was 25 years old and as healthy as a horse." "Undiagnosed weak heart," the doctor explained. "It happens. Radiation has nothing to do with it," Konstantin assured us. More lies. On the 10th day, I began to feel the first symptoms: constant nausea, dizziness when standing up too quickly, a headache that wouldn't go away even with aspirin. I looked at my hands and saw fine tremors that weren't there before. Viktor was worse. He had lost weight, was pale, and coughed up blood in the morning. "You need to see a doctor," I said. "The doctor will say it's normal and send you back to work," he replied. "It's not normal, Viktor. You're sick." "We're all sick, Grisha. Only some will die faster than others." On the 15th day, we lost 7 more men. Not all at once, one by one, over 24 hours. First was Boris, a miner from Moscow, who collapsed inside the tunnel, clutching his chest. We dragged him out, but he was already dead when he reached the surface. Then was Ivan, who simply didn't wake up in the morning. He was in bed, cold, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. 3 others started bleeding from their ears and noses simultaneously during the afternoon shift. Doctors took them away and never returned. The last 2 died convulsing during the night, vomiting blood so dark it looked like petroleum. 14 dead in 15 days, Viktor counted as we smoked outside the tent. Out of 400, that's a mortality rate of 3.5%. "Are you keeping statistics on our deaths?" I asked. "I'm trying to calculate how much time I have before I become a statistic too." He coughed and spat blood onto the ground. "I don't think much. I tried to write a letter to Oksana, but I couldn't find the words. What would I say? That I was slowly dying, digging under invisible poison? That I probably wouldn't see Dmitry and Katya grow up? That the 900 rubles bonus wasn't worth a life? I tore up the paper and threw it away. Inside the tunnel, the heat had risen to 55 degrees Celsius. The air was so hot it burned to breathe. Men frequently fainted. We had to drag them out, throw cold water on them, wait for them to wake up, send them back inside because the deadline didn't wait for our weakness. We're 12 meters from the point directly under the reactor core, Konstantin informed us on the 17th day. After that, we dig another 23 meters on the other side, and we're done. We're on schedule. How many of us will be alive to see the tunnel finished? Oleg asked. Konstantin didn't answer. On the 18th day, Viktor gave me his helmet. I won't need this anymore, he said. Don't talk nonsense. Of course you will. Grisha, look at me. Really look. I looked. Viktor had lost at least 15 kilos. His skin was yellowish, stretched over the bones of his face. Sunken eyes with purple circles around them. Hands trembling constantly. Hair beginning to fall out in clumps. I'm dying, he said simply. I know it. You know it. Everyone knows. So take the helmet. When I'm gone, I want someone to remember that Viktor Sokolov existed, that he dug under Chernobyl, that he didn't flee when he could have fled. Nobody could flee. They said it would be desertion. Some fled anyway. They disappeared at night. They were probably hunted down and shot, but they tried. We didn't try. We stayed. So keep the helmet and remember me. I took the cracked helmet from his trembling hands. It's still with me today. Now I want to know something from you who are listening to me on the other side. Where are you watching this from? Comment below. Write like this: Brazil, Portugal, Mexico, Argentina, Spain, wherever you are. I want to know how far this truth is reaching. How many people in how many countries are finally learning what really happened to us? Go ahead, comment now. It only takes 2 seconds. Now let me go back to those terrible days. On the 20th day, we reached the point directly under the reactor. Konstantin personally went down with a dosimeter. He stayed down there for 3 minutes, then came up pale as a sheet. So, we asked. Levels within expectations, he lied. But I had seen the dosimeter over his shoulder when he came up. The needle was saturated at maximum. The meter reached 500 Röntgens per hour. The needle was beyond that, touching the end of the scale, trembling as if it wanted to go further, but had nowhere to go. 500 Röntgens per hour is a lethal dose in 4 hours of exposure. And we were working 4-hour shifts exactly. Doing the simple math, each shift was a slow death sentence. But nobody said anything. Nobody complained. Because what good would complaining do? We went back to the tunnel. We dug deeper, hotter. More radiation, more dead. On the 21st day, we lost 16 men at once. Not inside the tunnel. In the medical quarantine tent where they had put those who were too sick to work, but not yet dead enough to be taken away. There was a fire during the night. The canvas tent caught fire and burned in minutes. Men tried to get out but were too weak, too sick. They screamed as they burned. I heard the screams from my tent 100 meters away. Sounds I will never forget. Howls of pain that didn't seem to come from human throats. Accident, the colonel explained in the morning. A poorly extinguished cigarette. Tragedy. They locked the tent from the outside, said a soldier who was on guard that night. He spoke softly, but I heard him. They locked it on purpose. They let them burn. Why? I asked, horrified. Because men dying of radiation are evidence. Ashes are not. The soldier was transferred the next day. I never saw him again. On the 23rd day, my body began to truly fail. It was no longer just nausea and dizziness. It was bleeding gums when brushing my teeth, nosebleeds for no reason. Tiny purple bruises appearing on my skin as if someone pinched me in my sleep. Hair falling out in clumps in the shower. It's the bone marrow, a doctor explained, when I was finally forced to seek help. The radiation destroys the cells that produce blood. Your body is ceasing to regenerate. Is there treatment? No, not for this level of exposure. I can give vitamins, blood transfusions if necessary, antibiotics for infections, but there is no cure. How long? Impossible to say. Some men lasted weeks, others months, a few years. You're lucky to still be standing. Lucky. What a strange word to describe dying slowly. Viktor stopped working on the 24th day. He simply couldn't anymore. He lay in bed trembling, delirious with fever, calling for his wife, Olga, for the children he had. I sat beside him and held his hand, which seemed made of bones covered in thin paper. "Grisha," he whispered, "tell Olga that I tried, that I did my best. You'll tell her yourself when you get out of here. I'm not leaving, we know that, but you will. You're strong, Grisha. You've always been stronger than me. So you tell her. Tell her how many died. Tell her the lies. Tell her the truth. I will, I promise. And take care of Olga if you can. She'll be alone with 3 children. I will." He died that night. He simply closed his eyes and stopped breathing. There were no convulsions, no blood, no drama. Just silence. I sat beside his body until morning, when they came to take it away. I didn't cry. I couldn't cry. It was as if the radiation had killed my ability to produce tears as well. On the 25th day, we were 123 men out of the original 400. 277 dead in 25 days, an average of 11 dead per day, and we still had 5 days of work ahead of us. "The tunnel is almost complete," Konstantin announced. He was also ill. I could tell by his yellowish eyes, his pale skin, the way he leaned on the table to avoid falling. 4 more days of digging, 1 day to install the cooling system, then you'll go home. Home. As if there were a home waiting. As if we could simply return to our previous lives, as if nothing had happened. "And the dead?" asked Oleg, who had survived against all odds. "They will be honored as heroes of the Soviet Union. Posthumous medals, pensions for the families. And the truth? Will they tell the truth about how many died and why? The official truth will be revealed at the appropriate time. Lies upon lies upon lies. On the 27th day, I was digging alone in a section of the tunnel when I felt something change. I can't explain it exactly. It was as if the air had become heavier, denser. My skin began to tingle. The metallic taste in my mouth intensified until it almost made me vomit. The light on my helmet began to flicker and then went out completely. I was in total darkness, 300 meters underground, directly beneath an exploded nuclear reactor. Panic. Pure, primal panic. I started crawling back through the tunnel in the dark, banging against the wooden supports, cutting my hands and knees on the sharp rock. I could hear my rapid breathing echoing. I could hear my heart pounding so hard it felt like it wanted to burst out of my chest. I also heard a strange sound, a deep hum coming from above, from the reactor, as if the whole earth were vibrating. I crawled for what seemed like hours, but was probably minutes. Finally, I saw a faint light ahead, other miners with working lamps. "What happened?" they asked. "I don't know. The lamp went out. The air felt strange." "Everyone out now," ordered an engineer. "Seismic activity detected in the reactor. Risk of collapse." We ran upstairs. Outside, helicopters flew over the reactor, dropping more sand and boron. Trucks arrived and departed. Soldiers ran. Alarms blared. "What's happening?" I asked a soldier. The core is sinking. It's melting through the concrete. If it hits the water table, it will explode and spread radiation across half of Europe. And the tunnel? Can we finish it in time? Finish in 2 days, or we all die. You, us, millions of people. 2 days, 8 meters of excavation were still to go. We worked double shifts. 8 hours in, 4 hours out. No real rest. Food swallowed hastily. Sleeping standing up against the tunnel walls. Men fainted and were dragged out and replaced immediately. 6 more died in those final 2 days. They just dropped dead in the middle of the work. Hearts stopping, organs failing, bodies giving up. On the 29th day, we completed the excavation. 150 meters of tunnel dug through solid rock under impossible conditions. Engineers began installing piping for the cooling system. On the 30th day, May 30th, 1986, the work was declared complete. "Comrades," he began, his voice faltering, "you have completed the most important mission in Soviet history. Thanks to your work, a nuclear catastrophe of unimaginable proportions was averted. The Soviet Union and all of Europe are indebted to you." Silence. No one applauded. No one celebrated. "You will receive the promised financial compensation, 5 times your monthly salary, certificates of merit, and," he hesitated, "and free lifetime medical treatment for any conditions related to the service rendered." "And the 309 who died?" asked Oleg. "They will receive posthumous honors, Hero of Socialist Labor medals. Families will receive special pensions." "And the truth? Will they tell the families that they died of radiation while digging under an exploded reactor?" "The families will be informed that their loved ones died serving their country under exceptional circumstances." "That's not an answer," Oleg insisted. "It's the answer I'm authorized to give," the colonel said. We were released the next day. They put us in different military trucks than the ones that brought us. These had tarpaulins completely covering the truck bed. Dark inside, no windows, no air. "Why are we being transported as prisoners?" someone asked. No one answered. We traveled for 3 days. We stopped at a military medical facility somewhere. They never told us where it was. They separated us. Each man went to an individual room. My room had a hospital bed, a chair, a barred window, a door that locked from the outside. Doctors came. They took blood, many samples. They measured residual radiation in our bodies with Geiger counters that clicked frantically. They did X-rays, CT scans, bone marrow tests that hurt so much I screamed. "How much time do I have left?" I asked the doctor in charge. He was older, with white hair and a weary expression, the kind who had seen many men die. "How much time for what?" "For life." He looked at my results. He sighed deeply. "Honestly, I don't know. Your white blood cell count is critically low. Platelets almost non-existent. Bone marrow severely damaged. Internal organs showing signs of failure. You should be dead." But I'm not. No, and that's a medical mystery. Some individuals have inexplicable resistance to radiation, a statistical anomaly. You can live for months, years, maybe decades, or you can die tomorrow. Impossible to predict. And the others? The 91? 37 have already died since they arrived here 3 days ago. The rest are in a similar condition to yours, or worse. I stayed in that facility for 6 weeks. Daily blood transfusions, constant intravenous antibiotics, vitamins, experimental drugs that made me vomit, a special diet rich in protein and calories. Slowly, incredibly, I began to improve. Not good health. I would never be healthy again. but stable enough not to die immediately. Of the 91 men alive at the end of the 30 days in the tunnel, 54 died in the first 8 weeks afterward. 37 remained, including me. At the end of July 1986, I was released. I was given an official document stating that I had served in a special national security operation and was entitled to free medical treatment and a small monthly compensation pension. I was also ordered, do not speak about details of the operation, state secret, violation punishable by imprisonment. I returned to Tula by train, a 2-day journey. I looked out the window at green fields, forests, villages. Everything so normal. People living normal lives, unaware that 309 men had died so that they could continue to live. I arrived home one afternoon in July. I walked down the street where I grew up. Everything the same. Same houses, same trees, same neighbors sitting on benches on the sidewalk. But I was different. I had left home weighing 85 kilos and was returning weighing 62. I had left with a full head of hair and was returning almost bald. I had left at 29 looking 29 and was returning looking 60. I knocked on my door. Oksana opened it. She looked at me and didn't recognize me for 3 whole seconds. Then her eyes widened. "Grigory?" Her voice was a whisper. "It's me." She threw herself at me crying. She hugged me so tightly it hurt my fragile ribs, but I didn't complain. Dmitri and Katya appeared behind her. Dmitri had grown. He seemed taller. Katya had cut her hair short. They stared at me with wide, slightly frightened eyes. "Daddy?" Katya asked uncertainly. "Yes, my daughter, Daddy's back." "Did you bring the doll?" For a second I didn't understand. Then I remembered. I had promised a doll. "I didn't bring it, I'm sorry, but I'll buy it tomorrow, okay?" She nodded, but I saw disappointment in her eyes. We went inside. The table was set for dinner. Boiled potatoes, braised cabbage, black bread, tea. Simple food. Wonderful. We sat down. Oksana kept looking at me. She touched my hand now and then, as if checking that I was real. "What happened?" she finally asked. "You're so thin, so different." "Hard work, very hard work." "Where have you been?" "I can't say. State secret." "Grigory, you're my husband. You can tell me." "I can't. I swear I can't. Forgive me." She accepted, but I saw pain in her eyes. Secrets between husband and wife are slow poison. That night I lay in my bed for the first time in 3 months. Soft mattress, clean pillow, blanket that smelled of home, of Oksana, of normal life. I should have slept soundly, but I couldn't. I closed my eyes and saw the tunnel. I heard the sounds of pickaxes. I felt an impossible heat. Through the faces of dead men, Viktor especially. I would wake up sweating, screaming, Oksana shaking me, asking what was wrong. Nightmare, just a nightmare. But it wasn't. It was a memory. I went back to work in the coal mine in August. I lasted 3 days. On the 3rd day, 100 meters underground, I had a panic attack. The darkness of the coal tunnel reminded me of the darkness of the tunnel under Chernobyl. The hot air reminded me of radioactive heat. I started hyperventilating, trembling, seeing black spots in my vision. They had to bring me to the surface. "I can't go down anymore," I told the foreman. "I understand," he replied gently. He knew where I had been. Rumors were already circulating. "I'll put you on surface duty, equipment maintenance." I worked in maintenance for another 5 years. Lower pay, but I could support my family. Dmitri grew up. Katya grew up. Life went on. But I was dying slowly. In the first year after Chernobyl, 13 of the 37 survivors died, mostly cancer, leukemia, tumors. In the second year, 9 more. In the third, 6 more. I went to the funerals. We all went. We met at these funerals, the fewer and fewer survivors, and looked at each other thinking, who's next? In 1991, 5 years after Chernobyl, there were 9 of us alive out of 400. The Soviet Union collapsed that year. Suddenly, there was no longer a country that sent us to our deaths. There was no longer a party that gave us orders. There was no longer a system that promised us honors and pensions. The pensions stopped arriving. The free medical treatment ended. The official documents became worthless paper. I looked for Viktor once, his widow, Olga. I found her living in a small, miserable apartment with her 3 children. She worked as a cleaner. The special pension they promised never came, she told me. They said there's no record of Viktor dying in special service. They said he simply died, an illness unrelated to work. But I was there. I saw him die. Your testimony doesn't count. You need official documentation, and all the documentation has been classified or destroyed. I gave her money I didn't have to give. It wasn't much, but it was something. Grigory, she said as I was leaving, Viktor told me. Before leaving on that last trip, he said that if anything happened, you would tell the truth. I will tell, when the time comes. The time is now, while there are still survivors alive. But I was afraid of the government, even without the Soviet Union, afraid of retaliation, afraid of being silenced like so many others were silenced. In 2001, 15 years after the accident, there were 5 of us survivors. Me, Oleg, and 3 others I barely knew because they worked different shifts. We met once a year on May 30th, the anniversary of the tunnel's completion. We drank vodka, we told stories, we cried for the dead. In 2011, 25 years later, there were 3 of us. In 2021, 35 years later, there were 2 of us, me and Viktor. Not the Viktor Sokolov who died in 1986. Another Viktor, Viktor Petrov. He died in 2023, liver cancer. His last year was agony. I visited him in the hospital 3 days before the end. Grisha, he whispered, you have to tell. I know. No, you don't know. You keep saying you'll tell, but you don't. And now it's just you, the last one. If you die without telling, we all die again. For real this time, forgotten, as if we never existed. He died 2 days later. I went to the funeral. There were 7 people, his family and me. 7 people to bury the last one, besides me, of 400 heroes. I went home that day and started writing. I wrote everything, every name I remembered, every death I witnessed, every lie I heard. I wrote for weeks. Then I put it all in a box. I was still afraid. But then Viktor Sokolov died, my original Viktor, my best friend, 3 months ago. And his last words were, you have to tell. So I'm telling. Today, 2026, 40 years after those 30 days under Chernobyl, I am 68 years old. I survived 12 different types of cancer. I had 37 surgeries. I take 17 different medications every day. My body is a map of scars and residual radiation. Doctors say it's a miracle I'm alive. I say it's a curse. Oksana died in 2018, metastatic breast cancer. Doctors said it wasn't related to my radiation exposure, but I know the truth. Radiation I carried in my body slowly contaminated her over decades. Dmitry is now 47 years old. He had 3 children. All were born with problems. One with a heart defect, another with kidney problems, the third with developmental delays. It's genetic, doctors explained, mutations in the DNA, possibly related to parental radiation exposure. My son pays the price for my forced heroism. Katya never managed to have children. She tried for years, repeated miscarriages. Finally, doctors discovered her reproductive system was damaged. Probably secondary radiation exposure during childhood, they said. My daughter is infertile because of me. So yes, I survived. But at what cost? Everyone I loved paid the price. And why? To dig a tunnel under a reactor that perhaps didn't even need the tunnel. Because engineers still debate whether the installed cooling system actually prevented meltdown, or if meltdown had already stopped on its own. 400 men sacrificed for perhaps nothing. The official lies began on day one and never stopped. First lie: radiation is at safe levels for short-term work. Truth: we were exposed to doses of 500 roentgens per hour or more. A lethal dose is 400 roentgens accumulated. Each 4-hour shift was a death sentence. Second lie: you will have adequate protective equipment. Truth: they gave us ordinary miner's helmets and normal work clothes. No radiation protection suits, no personal dosimeters, no way to know how much we were being exposed to before symptoms began. Third lie: work will last 30 days and then you go home. Technical truth, but crucial omission. Yes, work lasted 30 days, but they didn't say that most wouldn't survive those 30 days. They didn't say that of those who survived, most would die in the following months. They didn't say that virtually all of us would be dead within a decade. Fourth lie: special compensation of 5 times the monthly salary will be paid. Truth: they paid some. Many received nothing. For those who died, families had to fight for years for any compensation, and most never received it. My promised 900 rubles became 300 real rubles, and then nothing when the Soviet Union collapsed and the ruble lost all value. Fifth lie, the biggest of all: official death toll in the tunnel construction operation: 31 workers. 31. That's the lie that infuriates me more than all the others, because 309 died in the 30 days of work, another 54 in the following 8 weeks, hundreds more in the years after. Of 400 men, only 1 survives: me. But officially, only 31 died. Where are the other 278 bodies? Buried in unmarked graves, cremated without ceremony, registered as deaths from unrelated natural causes, erased from history. Do I have proof? I have my memory. I have a list of names I wrote down over the years. 217 names that I can remember out of 400. 217 men with faces, families, stories. Boris Lebedev, 33 years old, 3 children, died on the 14th day, vomiting blood. Ivan Kozlov, 27 years old, newly married, did not wake up on the morning of the 15th day. Anatoly Morozov, 25 years old, the first to die, convulsions and blood on the second night. Mikhail Popov, 41 years old, a veteran of Afghanistan, survived the war but not the radiation, died on the 20th day. Pyotr Vasilyev, 19 years old, the youngest of all, cried at night missing his mother, died on the 18th day calling for her. Valentin Kuznetsov, 52 years old, the oldest, said he had survived worse things. He was wrong, died on the 22nd day. Oleg Fedorov survived the 30 days, died 2 weeks later in the military hospital. The last thing he said was it worth it? He didn't know how to answer. And Viktor Sokolov, my Victor, 29 years old, my best friend since I was 8, died on the 25th day after giving me his helmet and making me promise I would tell the truth. I'm telling it now, Victor. 40 years late, but I'm telling it. Do documents exist? Some, few. Most were classified as state secrets. Then they were destroyed. But some survived. Leaked medical reports, testimonies from doctors who treated the dying, photos of mass graves, partial lists of names. Journalists tried to investigate over the years. Some were silenced. Others gave up when they realized no one wanted to listen. Because the truth about Chernobyl is inconvenient. For Russia, successor to the Soviet Union, because it exposes the incompetence and inhumanity of the Soviet system. For the global nuclear industry, because it demonstrates the real human costs of nuclear accidents. For governments in general, because it shows how easily they sacrifice the lives of ordinary workers when necessary. Real impact versus official impact of Chernobyl. Officially, the International Atomic Energy Agency estimated 4,000 deaths related to the accident. Independent organizations estimate between 93,000 and 200,000 deaths. The truth lies somewhere between these numbers. Of the liquidators alone, the 600,000 people who worked on cleanup and containment in the years following the accident, tens of thousands died from radiation-related illnesses. The exclusion zone continues to exist 40 years later, 30 kilometers around the plant where no one can live. Pripyat, a city of 50,000 inhabitants, remains a ghost town. Buildings collapsing, streets overgrown with vegetation, a rusty amusement park with a Ferris wheel that never turned because the accident happened days before its inauguration. Children born in the region after the accident, high rates of birth defects, thyroid cancer, leukemia. The entire region will be uninhabitable for another 20,000 years, according to scientists. 20,000 years. Imagine that. 20,000 years ago, humans still lived in caves. 20,000 years in the future, our distant descendants will still not be able to live on that land that we poisoned on an April night in 1986. Were the guilty punished? Not really. The plant director, Viktor Sokolov, was sentenced to 10 years in prison. He served 5. Chief engineer Nikolai Fomin, sentenced to 10 years, served 4. Shift engineer Anatoly Dyatlov, 6 years in prison. These men, whose decisions and mistakes caused the accident, served sentences less severe than common thieves. The designers of the RBMK reactor, with its known and uncorrected flaws, were never held accountable. Bureaucrats who ordered poorly planned safety tests never faced justice. Officials who lied about radiation levels in the early days, condemning thousands to lethal exposure, were never punished. The colonel who commanded us is retired somewhere, receiving a comfortable military pension. Konstantin Vasiliev, the engineer who supervised our work in the tunnel, died of cancer in 2003, but lived 17 years longer than he should have, considering the exposure he received. More than most of us. Real justice never came because justice would require admitting guilt. And power systems never admit guilt when they can simply deny it and wait for witnesses to die. Now almost all the witnesses are dead. It's just me left. What did I learn about human nature in those 30 days under the reactor? I learned that true heroism exists. I saw men too sick to stand, yet still pick up pickaxes and dig because they knew the work needed to be done. I saw miners share their last water when everyone was dehydrated to the point of delirium. I saw some feign illness to avoid shifts while friends died in their place. I saw a doctor refuse morphine to a dying man because we need to save it for more serious cases, even though we were all serious cases. I saw officers lie shamelessly, looking into the eyes of men they knew were doomed. I saw an entire society look the other way when survivors returned broken, treating us like contaminated lepers who would be better forgotten. I learned that when the power system decides you are disposable, you are disposable. It doesn't matter that you have a family. It doesn't matter that you have dreams. It doesn't matter that you're human. You are a tool to be used until you break and then discarded. I learned that solidarity among workers is real. That men from different regions, with different accents, with different lives, unite when they face death together. That Viktor's last words about taking care of Olga weren't just talk. They were a brother's plea to another brother. I learned that love is stronger than radiation. Oksana hugged me when I returned, even knowing I was contaminated. She stayed with me for 32 years, even though I was just a shell of the man she married. She died by my side, holding my hand. That's love that radiation can't kill. About power and truth. Governments lie. They always have. They always will lie. They lie because truth is inconvenient, man, politically dangerous. They lie because they can, because who will contradict them? Dead workers don't speak. Intimidated survivors remain silent. Documents are classified or destroyed. Independent witnesses are barred or discredited. And the general population wants to believe the lies because truth is too frightening. The human cost of political lies is always paid by the weakest. We pay with lives. Families have paid with decades of suffering. The entire region pays to this day with poisoned land and damaged generations. But politicians and bureaucrats who lied continued with their careers, their pensions, their comfortable lives. The importance of independent witnesses. If it weren't for some courageous journalists, some honest scientists, some doctors who kept secret records, the truth about Chernobyl would have been completely buried. Official history would be the only story. And official history is always a convenient lie. That's why I'm telling this now, because when I die, there will be no more direct witnesses of the 400 miners. There will only be the official history of 31 dead and a heroic mission accomplished. The danger of forgetting or denying. We are forgetting. The new generation doesn't know, doesn't understand. For them, Chernobyl is a name in a history book, a photo of a rusty Ferris wheel, a dramatic television series. It's not real. It's not 309 men dying in 30 days. It's not Viktor handing me a cracked helmet with trembling hands. It's not me vomiting blood alone in the dark 300 meters underground. Denial is worse. There are people who deny that the accident was so serious, who deny the number of deaths, who say that radiation isn't as dangerous as they say, who blame victims for exaggerating symptoms. To these people I say, come see my body covered in scars from 37 surgeries. Come read the list of 217 names of men I saw die. Come explain to Dmitry why his children were born sick. Come tell Katya that she can't have children because she exaggerated. Could it happen again? Yes. Fukushima in 2011 proved it. A catastrophic nuclear accident in a technologically advanced country with strict safety protocols. Yet it happened. Because nuclear energy has zero margin for error, and humans are not infallible. Warning signs in Chernobyl that were ignored. The RBMK reactor had known design flaws. Similar tests at other plants had shown problems. Operators reported anomalies that were disregarded. The safety culture was subordinated to deadlines and production. All of this was ignored until it was too late. What the public should know. Governments will not tell the whole truth in nuclear emergencies. They will downplay it, delay evacuations, and say everything is under control when it isn't. Because panic is bad for public order, and truth is bad for politics. So don't rely solely on official sources. Seek independent information. Prepare yourselves. Have a plan. What governments will never voluntarily disclose: the real human cost. How many workers die doing cleanup? How many people develop illnesses years later? How long the region will remain uninhabitable? How much money it really costs? Because these numbers destroy the narrative of nuclear energy as a clean and cheap solution. Nuclear energy itself. I am not simply against it, nor simply in favor of it. Well-managed nuclear energy can be relatively safe. It can reduce carbon emissions. It can provide reliable energy. But well-managed is a crucial part. And human management always has flaws. Corruption, haste, negligence, simple human error. Any of these can cause catastrophe. So if we are going to use nuclear energy, we need total transparency, a safety culture above production, massive investment in maintenance and upgrades, real emergency plans, not just on paper, real accountability when mistakes happen. Do we have that? Rarely. Impossible preparation versus sensible preparation. Nobody can fully prepare for a nuclear accident. Radiation is invisible, odorless, and penetrating. You can't build a bunker at home. You can't stockpile radiation protection. Action. But sensible preparation is possible. Knowing where nearby nuclear power plants are, having battery-powered radios for emergencies, knowing evacuation routes, having basic supplies for a few days, having important documents in an accessible place for quick evacuation. And above all, don't wait for the government to tell you to evacuate. If you hear that there has been an accident at a plant near you, leave immediately. Don't wait for official confirmation. Officials in Pripyat waited 36 hours to evacuate the city. In those 36 hours, the entire population was unnecessarily exposed. Some people left on their own in the first few hours and were saved. Personal reflections on what I lost besides health. I lost my identity as a miner. Work was who I was. Take that away from me, and who am I? I lost the friendship of Viktor, whom I had known since childhood. 40 years later, I still miss him daily. I lost the possibility of aging normally with Oksana, of seeing healthy grandchildren, of living a peaceful old age. I lost sleep without nightmares. I lost the ability to be in dark, enclosed spaces without panicking. I lost faith in a system that claimed to protect workers. I lost my innocence about the nature of power. What I gained, paradoxically, the perspective that life is precious and fragile. Each day lived is a day stolen from death. This makes each sunrise a small miracle. Gratitude for simple things. Being able to breathe without pain, to eat without vomiting, to walk without help. Things that normal people ignore are victories for me. Purpose, to tell stories, to ensure that the dead are not forgotten. This kept me alive when I should have died. Compassion for others who suffer. I saw so much suffering that I cannot ignore the suffering of others. I help when I can, even though I have little. Specific regrets. I regret not having fled when it was still possible. In the first few days, some men fled at night. They were hunted, but some probably escaped. I stayed out of fear, out of obedience, out of belief in patriotic duty. Nonsense. My duty was to my family, not to a system that saw me as a disposable tool. I regret not having written to Oksana from the camp. I could have sent a smuggled letter telling the truth, saying I loved her and the children, telling them to prepare for the possibility that I might not return. Instead, I left her in the dark until I appeared like a ghost at the door. I regret not having documented more. I should have stolen a camera, taken photos, recorded the names of all 400 people, documented everything. Instead, I relied on my memory, which is failing with age. Decisions I would redo differently. I wouldn't have gone. I would have fled. I would have faced the consequences of desertion, because prison is better than a slow death from radiation. I would have shouted louder about the lies. I would have sought out Western journalists, told everything, risked prison to expose the truth. I would have taken better care of myself after returning. I would have insisted on better treatment, sued the government, fought for rights instead of accepting crumbs. Decisions I would redo the same way. I would have given Viktor water from my canteen when he was dehydrated, even though I was thirsty too. I would have carried tools for an exhausted colleague, even though my back ached. I would have stayed by Viktor's side when he was dying, even risking catching an infection from him. Because that's humanity. That's what separates us from machines. How the experience changed my worldview. Before Chernobyl, I believed in the system. I believed the government protected workers. I believed heroism was rewarded. I believed truth eventually prevailed. Now I know that systems use people, that government protects systems, not workers, that heroism is often punished with death and oblivion, that lies prevail when convenient and witnesses can be silenced. But I also learned that individual human connections are real even when systems are false, that Oksana's love was real, that Viktor's friendship was real, that the compassion of some doctors was real, that these small personal things are the only ones that truly matter in the end. Current relationship with the memory of the event. I live with it every day. It's not something that happened in the past. It's a continuous present. I wake up and take medication for radiation sickness. I look in the mirror and see a body destroyed by 30 days under the reactor. I visit Oksana's grave, and I know that radiation contributed to her death. I see Dmitry and his sick grandchildren, and I know it's my fault, even though it wasn't my choice. Memories are a burden, but also a responsibility. I am the guardian of the history of 309 men who cannot tell their own stories. This weighs heavily, but also gives meaning. Forgiveness or lack thereof. I haven't forgiven the officers who lied. I won't forgive them. They deserve to be remembered as liars and murderers. I forgave Konstantin in part because he was also a victim, even though he was a supervisor. He also got sick, also suffered, also was used by the system. I forgave the plant operators who made mistakes, because no one deserves to carry the guilt for an accident of this magnitude. They have already paid a high price. I haven't forgiven the system. The Soviet Union is dead, but the mentality that prioritized production over safety, propaganda over truth, still exists in many places. This mentality doesn't deserve forgiveness. It deserves exposure and destruction. I forgave myself for surviving when others died. It took decades, but I finally understood that it wasn't my choice. Some bodies withstand radiation better than others. Genetic anomaly, luck, destiny. It doesn't matter what you call it. It's not my fault I survived, just as it wasn't Viktor's fault he died. Viktor's helmet is right here in front of me as I record this. Cracked in 3 places. Broken front bulb. Sweat stain on the inner lining. Dark stain that might be his blood from the last time he wore it before giving it to me. I hold this helmet and feel the weight of 40 years, the weight of 309 lives, the weight of untold truth. This helmet means Viktor existed. It means that the friendship between 2 8-year-old boys from Tula survived everything until radiation finally separated us. It means that a promise made by a dying man to a man who survives is sacred. That's why I'm here telling this story, fulfilling a promise. Current state. I have weeks or months left, according to the last doctor who examined me. The cancer has returned, 13th type. There are no more possible surgeries. There are no more treatments. My body can't take it anymore, so it's just a matter of time now. I'm at peace with that. I lived 40 years longer than I should have. I saw Dmitry grow up and have a family, even if it was an imperfect family. I saw the Soviet Union fall. I saw the world change. I saw the truth about Chernobyl slowly emerge, despite all attempts to bury it. Daily life today is simple. I wake up at 6. I take 17 different pills. I eat porridge because that's all my stomach can handle. I sit on the balcony when the weather permits. I smoke cigarettes, even though doctors tell me not to, because what difference does it make now? I visit Oksana's grave twice a week. I talk to her. I tell her that I'm finally telling my story, that Viktor will finally have a voice. In the afternoon, I receive a visit from Dmitry or Katya. We play cards. We talk. We avoid talking about the past because it hurts too much. At night, I take more medication. I go to bed early because I'm constantly tired. I dream of tunnels, always tunnels, darkness and heat, and the sound of pickaxes and the faces of the dead. I wake up sweating. I repeat everything the next day. Why did I decide to tell this story now? Because Viktor Sokolov died 3 months ago and was the last one besides me. Because I know my time is running out. Because I watched a television series about Chernobyl that was good, but it still didn't tell the complete story of the 400 miners. Because the world is forgetting. Because new reactors are being built with the same promises of safety we heard before. Because I need someone to know. I need the truth to survive, even if I don't survive. To the families of victims who never received a real explanation. Your fathers, husbands, brothers, sons died as heroes, but also as victims. They died saving Europe from a greater catastrophe, but they died because the system treated them as disposable. Both things are true. Honor their memory, but also demand justice. It's never too late for justice. To other survivors, if there are any I don't know, you are not alone. I know what you suffered. I know the nightmares. I know the pain. I know the guilt of having survived. You are not to blame. You are strong for still being here. Tell your story too. The more voices, the harder it is to silence us. To young people who haven't lived through this, learn, question authority, don't accept convenient lies. When the government says something dangerous is safe, investigate. When people say sacrifice is necessary, ask who is being sacrificed and for whose benefit. Remember that behind every statistical number are real people with real families and real dreams. For leaders and scientists, transparency saves lives, lies kill. A culture of safety must always prevail over deadlines and production. Workers are not disposable. If you can't guarantee safety, don't build reactors. For humanity in general, Chernobyl was not an isolated accident. It was a consequence of a system that valued appearance over reality, propaganda over truth, production over people. These systems still exist. They can cause the next Chernobyl anywhere. Watch, question, demand accountability. Last thought on the dead. Boris, Ivan, Anatoly, Mikhail, Pyotr, Valentin, Oleg, and 210 others whose names I remember. And Viktor, always Viktor. You were used and discarded. You were called heroes but treated as tools. You died alone with pain that no one should feel. You were buried in nameless graves or cremated without ceremony. You were forgotten by the system that killed you. But I haven't forgotten. As long as I breathe, you will be remembered. When I die, this recording will remember. You existed. You mattered. You deserve to be known. If you were alive today, you would be 60, 70 years old. You would have grandchildren. You would have memories of a long life. Instead, you only have me, an old man dying, telling a story. But it's something. It's testimony. It's truth. I promised I would tell it, and I am telling it. I hope that wherever you are, you can finally rest knowing that you haven't been completely forgotten. Closing. Viktor's cracked helmet. I feel its weight, the weight of iron and memory, and a fulfilled promise. The phrase Viktor said when he gave me the helmet echoes. Keep this for me, Grisha. If I don't get out of here, at least the helmet will. He didn't get out. But the helmet got out, and the story got out, and the truth is finally coming out after 40 years of silence. I feel a mixture of things now. Sadness for everything that was lost, anger for everything that was lied about, peace for finally having told the story. I hope someone will listen, someone will care, someone will remember. The last image I have is of Viktor lying on his camp bed on the 24th day, holding my hand with his hand that was just bone and skin, looking at me with eyes that knew death was near, whispering, "You tell, Grisha, you tell." I am telling, my brother. I am finally telling. If you've made it this far, if you've accompanied me throughout this journey, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Now leave a like on this video. It's not out of vanity. It's so that more people can see it. And if you're not yet subscribed, subscribe to the channel now, because I have more stories to tell before it's too late. And answer me in the comments, what shocked you the most? Was it learning that 309 men died in 30 days? Was it discovering the lies about the real numbers? Was it understanding that this could happen again? Write down what stuck with you, because these memories can't die with me. I need to know that someone will remember. I need to know that Viktor, Boris, Ivan, Anatoly, Mikhail, Pyotr, Valentin, Oleg, and 210 others whose names bear this will not just be forgotten numbers in history, but will be people remembered by someone, somewhere, who heard this story and decided never to forget.